You're listening to the Prosperity Report Love and Money podcast. Find out what every couple needs to become a winning team in love and money. We bring you actionable ideas from expert therapists and experienced married couples, helping you stay happily married longer. Stay tuned until the end. We'll leave you with a tip you can start using today in our 5-minute activation segment. Now here's your host, best-selling author, speaker, and psychotherapist, Kanae Corder.
Hey guys, it's Financial Awareness Month. In honor of Financial Awareness Month, we're doing big things. First, we've dedicated a portion of every Prosperity Club membership to Allstate Foundation's Purple Purse. I will personally match the amount of money raised. Purple Purse helps survivors of domestic abuse break free and become financially stable. Did you know that 99% of all domestic violence cases include financial abuse? Financial abuse is this invisible weapon that abusers use to keep their victims trapped. And for that reason, over 3 million children witness domestic violence each year. I'd like to do something about it, and I'm wondering if you'd help me. Go to kanaecorder.com/prosperity-club to get your Prosperity Club membership today, and a portion of your membership will be donated to Purple Purse. Let's help domestic violence survivors thrive and live a prosperous life. So we're also kicking off a new Marriage Money Mission group coaching course. This course starts February, May, August, and November. So it's time. The Marriage Money Mission course helps couples take the money argument off the table so they can navigate the money cycle to reach their heart's desire. This course will bring videos, audios, ebooks, and so much more to help you and your partner become a winning team in love and money. But only Prosperity Club members will get all the details. So join our private Facebook group to find out all about it. Go to kanaecorder.com/Facebook. And remember, if you get your Prosperity Club membership this month, a portion goes to Allstate Foundation's Purple Purse to help end domestic abuse. I'll see you there. For now, let's get on with the show. I'm your host, Kanae Corder, best-selling author, speaker, and psychotherapist specializing in financial therapy. Today, our guests are Kevin and Matti Williams, a successfully married couple that we'll have a conversation with about marriage and retirement. Kevin and Matti Williams are Chicago natives who happened to meet in Minnesota as students. After a brief 5-year romance, they married and have been married for 38 years and counting. During that time, they've raised 2 children and are now grandparents to 2 grandchildren. Kevin and Matti have each worked pretty consistently with long-term employment at a couple of employers. They've both worked and retired as computer system professionals. They are proud to say that a steady savings plan has allowed them to retire a bit early. Please join me in welcoming Kevin and Matti Williams to the Prosperity Report. Hey, guys.
Hey, how are you?
I am awesome. It's so glad to be here with you guys. I miss you guys.
I know.
So for those of you who don't know, I am a Chicago native, and that's where I met Matti and Kevin, who have supported me through my entire career because I've been knowing you guys almost 20 years now. Can you believe that?
Wow. Time flies.
Yeah, I can't believe it's been that long. And aside from you guys supporting me, like I've seen you through, like your children were just maybe in high school or even younger when I met you guys. So we've been through it together. So one of the first questions that I start every interview with is, what is your idea of prosperity?
Well, for me, I guess a lot of people first think wealth, lots of money and stuff like that. And while money is certainly a part of it, for me, it's being comfortable and having the freedom to do what you want to do and not be worried about it and not be worried about the money. If I see something, I want to do it. I want to travel, I want to go somewhere. I want to spend money. I just do it. If I see something I want, I go for it because I like it and not have to say, oh my God, we can't afford to do this. So prosperity for me is comfort and a little bit of indulgence.
Yeah, you want to enjoy life. So yeah, I like that. I like that freedom. That's such a cool word. And also kind of what I hear you saying, because this is something I know about you guys, is that you do what you want to do. You just do it in the right timing. And that is so freeing. So you don't have to sacrifice as much. You just know when to do it. You don't have to suffer either, because that's a word that I think that people tend to go through. People suffer. What I hear you saying is a little bit of indulgence is okay because you've made this great plan and all you have to do is stick to the plan and you can do pretty much whatever you want.
Yeah, within limits, but yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're not buying an island. I know.
Right. That is really, really important. There's a level of comfort and security, I guess, in knowing that the things are okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to have any major worries or concerns about stuff. That whole wealth portion of prosperity, we feel that that's been nurtured and cared for, as well as the kind of the health portion, which is having a happy family, a happy home, having wonderful friendships and associations with you. You're like family.
Yes.
And it's like you care for your life and you care for your money.
Exactly.
I guess for me, that's kind of what defines prosperity, that whole balance of health and, emotional and physical health, and a few dollars in the bank.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm a huge proponent of that because wealth and wellness just go hand in hand. Because what good is it for you to amass all this money if you don't have the health to execute on any of the things you would have done with the money? So I totally get it. I love that. The plan that you have for your wealth, your health plan is just as important, maybe even more important.
Absolutely, yes. Because you're not going to enjoy anything if you are bent over and broke down.
Exactly. Or spending that retirement money on doctor's bills.
Right.
Right. And I remember early on when I first met you guys working out together, like Matti, I would meet up with you and you would maybe have just come from the gym with Kevin, or maybe you're going to the gym with Kevin. So that was kind of a component of your relationship, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. There was that period where we were really committed to fitness, where we did a couple of half marathons. You joined a running group and found that it was a good way of keeping in shape and, hanging together. And it was an activity that just kept us going. I additionally did a couple of triathlons just because I'm a swimmer. For me, the marathons were fun, but running is like my least favorite activity.
Okay.
But it's like something you have to do till you have to have the win,
Yep. So true. I recently picked up running myself, and I've always run just a little bit, like just enough to say I have done it. But I notice the more miles that I do, the more lean, I get, and I just feel so much better. But I know that there's also a place where you can overdo it. So we don't have to worry about that. I'm not going to ever overdo running. So that kind of brings me to another question, because, working out is not always easy. There's some days where I don't want to go do it. Now, I love working out, but that doesn't mean that I want to do it every day. Talk to me about what was the hardest part of preparing for retirement?
Yeah, I'm going to say that the hardest part is probably just getting started.
Oh.
Because once you put things in place, once you put a savings plan in place, it becomes automatic. That portion becomes automatic.
Yeah.
Now, especially, we both worked in the private industry. So in private industry, you don't have a generous pension to look forward to. So you have to maximize what your employer has available in terms of a 401k. If your employer doesn't have a 401k, then you have to kind of have your own IRA put in place.
Right.
But the thing is that once you start taking money out, make it automatically from your bank account, you don't miss that money.
Right. If you don't see it, you don't miss it. And that's what we had to put in place.
Yeah.
And that's such a great point. And as a financial advisor, I'm getting chills over here. And I'm like, oh my God, that is so true. It is sort of automatic. And then after you do it for a while, it's such a habit and it's just second nature. And the money isn't there, so you don't miss it. And so that part becomes so natural. But then you have to execute the plan and like, oh, did we get it right?
There are always adjustments that we have to make when we put money aside. But when we first got married and we were young, we spent. It's like, oh, we got to get some furniture. Oh, we got to do this. Oh, we need to do that. But we had to make sure that we put money aside, and it was a minimal amount. But when we got new jobs, it's like when I started working at a different job, I said, you know what? I wasn't working the 401k plan like I should have. We could have saved a lot more money. Let's have them take the maximum out. And again, you don't see it, you don't miss it. And so we had to make adjustments along the way. When the market tanked in 2008 and everybody got hit, it's like, oh my God, we got to make another adjustment because we lost so much money.
Yeah, I remember that.
Watching a lot more closely, watching our assets and our investments.
But I don't know if I told you back then, but one thing that I will say is that you guys were a lot more calm and accepting of what was happening than some of my other, like I see other clients just freak out. And not that it didn't hurt you or you didn't have any emotion around it, but I think the way that you handled it was like, hey, okay, it happened and we just got to keep going. And I thought that was so impressive.
Well, there was nothing we could do about it.
Well, what you don't want to do, you don't want to bail because the market has always gone up and down.
Yes.
Those vicious downturns, they happen sometimes. What I remember is when Asia was born, our daughter was born in 87, and there was a big market crash.
Oh, yeah.
But we kind of, you stay the course. The later years, you make adjustments because you're heading towards retirement because you don't want the volatility.
Absolutely.
When you want to be able to kind of maintain what you have a portion, I guess, that remains aggressive, but you kind of convert stuff to income and...
Right, absolutely. So one of the things you mentioned was that there's different things happening in different times. So you saved for retirement over a couple decades. And so with that in mind, in the 80s, interest rates were really high. So you could have your money in a CD and get some pretty good returns off of it. But nowadays, you're barely getting 1%.
That's correct.
Yeah. So there were like different strategies for different times. Is that right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because in the 80s, early 80s, interest rates were such that you could get a CD that would pay you as much as 15%. I mean, but at the same time, I remember shortly after we got married, when we bought our first condo, we paid 17%.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
Both your interest rates. So yeah, you were getting more money in your savings, but you were paying more money in debt. So yeah, I did have quite a few clients that were debt averse because interest rates were so high from what they had remembered. But I would try to sell the money. In the last 10 years, interest rates have been so low, so you can get money for cheap. So borrowing is not so bad. And I think you guys were really good at knowing when to borrow and when not to borrow. That's something that I learned watching you guys too.
Yeah, we kind of grew up in it's like when we started, we didn't buy it if we didn't have the money. We didn't take on a lot of credit card debt. We didn't take on a lot of debt. But that was the last time we bought a new car was in the early 80s. It's never economically feasible to buy a new car.
Yeah.
They lose value immediately
when you drive it off the lot.
Yeah, we've had cars over the years, but it was never another new car.
Yeah. And that's a great part to your strategy, because if you're not giving that money to GM or, whatever, Chevy or whoever you decide to give that money to, if you're not giving the money to them, then you can keep the money and put in your savings or your retirement or wherever you like to put it, into your own home maybe. So I was going to ask you this question, but it seems like you kind of answered it already. And that was, you planned for this retirement, and 2008, 2009 happened. So I guess in that sense, it didn't go the way you planned, but then maybe your plan included some fluctuation. Tell me about that.
I would have to say, yeah, because, we were still working and you knew that there were going to be fluctuations. We watched the market drop like everybody else. We watched home values drop, but there was, I guess, some sense that once the correction filtered out, that there would be a sufficient recovery before we had to retire.
Right.
Well, I went through this thing myself. I panicked a lot. So after 2008, I started watching. It's like we lost how many hundreds and thousands of dollars? So as far as retirement, it seemed far away, but I knew we had to have this plan in place. We lost several $100,000 in our 401k. That's when I started watching. And I know that you should not look at it every day, but go out there, and I panic. If the market was up, I was like, oh, great. If it was down, it's like, oh, my God.
Yeah, I do remember that now that you say that. I do remember that. And I remember us talking about it, because one thing that I will say is that as long as you don't sell, you don't realize the loss, right? So you can that whole like buy and hold. And so you lost value, not necessarily actual dollars, because those stocks or those mutual funds could possibly go back up and you could gain back the value that you had once lost.
Yes, your sensibilities help to keep me calm, help to calm me down. To that $1 million, and it's like, oh no, we got to go. We got to start over. We got to do what? We got how much further to go?
Yeah. Because I remember that your goal was to get to 1 million. And how did that feel when you did?
Oh my God, it was freeing, because because I think right around the same time, we lost a couple of years because of that big drop.
Yeah.
Around the same time that we went over the $1 million mark, we paid off the house.
Oh.
So we didn't have a mortgage anymore, and everything just kind of fell into place right around the same time. So it really, really felt good. So after that, retirement seemed closer, and I was working toward a certain age versus a certain amount.
So yeah, that definitely deserves a round of applause.
One thing that though is that 1 million is a nice goal to have, but 1 million today isn't what it was 20 years ago.
Right. When you first set that goal.
25 years ago, 30 years ago, if somebody said, oh, I'll give you $1 million, I said, oh, I can quit my job. Somebody can quit their job on $1 million.
That is so true. I was just listening to one of my favorite podcasts, and Mark Cuban was being interviewed, and he was talking about what it felt like to hit the $1 billion mark. And right. And so it's kind of like, is that where we are now? Like 1 million is so not sexy anymore. You got to like reach for $1 billion.
$1 billion is the new million.
Right. Exactly. Mm-hmm. So you raise children, you save for retirement. Oh, I did have another question for you around saving for retirement. And that is, how did you navigate putting 2 children through college while still saving for retirement? Let's talk about that.
That's part of the plan.
Right. When you make a certain amount of money, the government tells you you don't need any help. It can be challenging. So we didn't really want them to have to pay back huge loans. So, how did we do that, Kevin?
Well, they took it was kind of a pay-as-you-go thing.
Yeah, you save some of it, you pay some out of pocket, and they took out loans on some of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So they had to own ownership of their education too.
Yeah, that is so crucial, because I think what happens, this is something I hear a lot. A lot of clients want to put money in their children's future, forgetting their own future. And I'm like, you can borrow for college, but you cannot borrow for retirement. Like, please.
Right.
Right.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that is awesome that you had the insight to see that if we put too much in our children, we won't have, they'll be taking care of us in retirement. That's not the freedom or comfort that you talked
Right.
about
And
earlier.
you know what? When you have to take some responsibility for your own education,
Yes, I totally agree with you on that. And I have some young clients now whose parents paid it all for them. Like they made a lot of mistakes because they didn't feel the consequences of what those mistakes were. Parents were
right.
taking on that. They were losing money while their children were deciding that they didn't want to do these three things that they're on their third major. And we're like, you know what? It's time
Right. I
to
know.
make a decision. And yeah, you're right. You do have to have some responsibility for your own future.
Yeah, you always want better for your children. Like my parents, I was the first one who went away to college. Out of five girls, I was the first one who went away to college. And, I had a financial aid package that required me to pay some back. I had loans and stuff like that. And you are more responsible and you have to be careful. You want better for your children, but you want them to have a sense of responsibility as well.
Yeah, it's a crucial balance or harmony that you have to, where you want them to value and understand money, but you do want them to have a better life than you had. And that's not always easy finding that balance between those two.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I dealt with, well, my mom, I should say, she was brilliant in the way that she got us through college because we went to private school as we were growing up. And just like you said, the government decides that you don't need any help. Well, she had a great salary, but she had three children. So the great salary doesn't mean as much when you have three children going to private school. It's like, yeah, but I was sitting in a private school. I didn't get a chance to really save for college as much. And so just like you guys, she kind of had us like have some responsibility for our college, but she was really creative in the way that she approached financial aid. And so we, at some point, I don't think we did it in our first year, but in our second year, became independent so that we could have our own financial aid and it not be about her. A brilliant strategy. And she's not even in finance, but it was something that she thought of and it worked well.
Awesome. Yeah. You got to be creative.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. So one of the most important questions for me is, what are you doing now after retirement? I know you've got some things going on because you guys are productive and active people. So tell me about what you're doing now.
The pause was because some of us are doing something very actively, and some of the rest of us, me, not being so productive.
Are more active at golfing.
Yeah, I am an enthusiastic, though I'm not very good at golfing. I am enthusiastic. My dad lives in Vegas, and I traveled with him to Southern California. I've gone with my friends, out to the East Coast. And while here, I do a little bit of golfing.
Okay.
Of late, I have been taking a technology-based class, just learning a little bit more about a certain area that my background was in more software, and this is more hardware-related stuff that I've been reading up on. Matti asked me to what purpose, and I keep threatening to go back to work.
Because I can't believe that he really thinks he's going to go back to work, but maybe he will. Maybe as a consultant, but that's based on me thinking I could not go back into the corporate world. So that's just me. Maybe I don't see him getting up and going to a job every day.
Yeah, but it also lends to one of the things that I tell, now my psychotherapy clients is being a lifelong learner is a great way to add to that health and the wealth that we talked about earlier, because as you continue to learn, you just stay more active, like your brain is more active. So the rest of you, if you have a healthy brain, you could have a healthier body sometimes too.
Absolutely. I agree with that. And try to stay active learning because I do read a lot of personal development books, and that's based on what I'm doing for the last couple of years because we had the house paid for, and in retirement, it's like, okay, we don't have any kids, we don't have any deductions. I need a business deduction, so I got involved working with Legal Shield.
Okay.
I became an independent associate, kind of my own business, where I work with a company that offers legal protection and identity theft protection for individuals at an affordable rate. And I like sharing the information and being available to help people who need access to that kind of thing. And at the same time, it's, have some kind of coverage when you need it. My initial thought when I retired was to get more into designing, and Legal Shield does keep me pretty busy. So I stay on the go quite a bit between Legal Shield and trying to find the time to sew or do some designing and following our investment and making sure that we follow our money that allowed us to retire early. So it keeps me pretty busy.
So a couple things I hear you saying, I know you guys do a lot together, but it also sounds like you still have your separate lives. Like you still have stuff that you both find. You have passion in golf, and Maddie, you have your passion in building a business, and designing. So you both have your separate passions, and then whatever it is that you guys do together, but you still have these separate lives that bring you joy.
Absolutely, because I think that how far as our relationship and what it's like in retirement, it could be crazy if we had to sit and look at each other every day. I do enjoy being able to spend time with him and not go to work and have our time dictated by things we have to do.
Right.
That we don't necessarily want to have to do, but I can go shopping. Which I enjoy. Or we do a lot of passing during the day and say, okay, I'm going to do this. I got this to do. I'll see you. And let's, we still try to do, I insist that we do date night at least once a month.
Okay, good. So that's awesome. And one of the things you also mentioned was following the money, continue to follow the money. So the plan isn't over. So you planned for retirement, but then you have to continue because retirement can be, what did Kevin say earlier, like 60 years or something? So you can live a long life, right? And you got to make sure this money lasts. So aside from whatever you build in your business, like you have this active income, but you need that money to stay active as well.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
What happens is that hopefully you accumulate assets sufficient so that in retirement, those assets can continue to provide income without adversely affecting the kind of the principal.
Right. Exactly. Mm-hmm. And this is, well, you probably know this from just knowing me, but I didn't have a desire to get married. And so I recently gained that desire, well into my 30s. So many years I went without wanting to be married. But then as working at Morgan Stanley, and I'm seeing that this goal together, two people working towards the same goal, is just so more efficient, so much more efficient. And so, and so when I'm listening to you guys talk, what I hear is, you had Maddie's 401k, you had Kevin's 401k, and now you'll have, both of you will have your Social Security, and all of these things working together in whatever accounts you had outside of those 401ks. But all of these things working together for the bigger picture so that both of you can live the life of comfort and freedom and good health. So yeah, that's really awesome. And that's why I love that this podcast is going to focus on the 50% or so of marriages that stay together successfully, because we already talked about how, you get divorced and you split the money and you don't get your dreams. But what about the ones that do stay together, like you guys, and then actually retire and see the dreams starting to come true and really live them? Like that is, you guys are a great example of that.
Yeah, it helps when you are all pulling in the same direction. If you start off in a rowboat and you got to be pulling in the same direction, and hopefully that rowboat can get a motor. And
Right. And to keep going with your analogy, you had a motor and then 2008 happened and it kind of like stopped. So then you had to go to sale, right? Bring out the sales to push it
Right.
forward. And then you got the motor fixed again and then you kicked it back on because it did eventually pick back up. If you remember, Maddie, we would watch it every day and I'm like, don't look at it every day. But
I know.
eventually it did pick back up and then you were like, woohoo, you're back up and
Yeah.
running.
And now here we are. We got a yacht.
Yes. Just to keep the joke going. I love it. Yes. And so the last question that I like to ask and kind of wrap up each interview with is, it's kind of a full question. So it's, what is the best marriage advice you've ever received or the advice you wish somebody would have told you?
I guess for me, something that I've heard over time that kind of keeps me settled is that the phrase, don't sweat the small stuff, and it's all small stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It is whatever it is, it's not that big a deal to throw you off track.
Yeah, great point.
You can, whatever it is, you can get past it,
Well, for me, I would say patience, and you got to see the bigger picture. Although that stuff that is not small stuff, you got to have patience and you got to communicate. You got to have some kind of open communication. You got to say, I've heard, don't go to bed angry. Well, I can't say that I haven't gone to bed angry.
Right.
But you got to have patience and you got to communicate.
Yeah. And maybe you're going to say, look, I'm mad, but I'm going to bed.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. I love that. Yeah. Communication is so important. And I think that even listening to this interview, because when people listening to you guys have this conversation with me, I think what they will take away from it is that it's sort of seamless. You're saying the same things, not that you're agreeing, you're not saying the same words, but it all goes in the same direction, kind of like that boat that Kevin was talking about. And that's because you've communicated over the years. So to have this conversation with me is pretty seamless and easy.
Yes. And just in that same analogy, if you're pulling and if you're rowing in different directions, the boat stands still. You're not going anywhere.
Preach. That was nice. I love that.
Some kind of coordination and agreement that this is where we're trying to get to. We're not trying to stand still.
Yeah, absolutely. And that goes back to seeing the bigger picture, because there's a saying that I have, and it's you can be right or you can be happy. I didn't make it up, but I say it all the time. But you can be right or you can be happy. And sometimes you want to roll in the opposite direction and prove your point, but sometimes you just have to stop so the boat will keep moving. And maybe the other person will find out that you were right. Maybe they won't, or maybe you'll find out you were wrong.
Correct.
Right. So that goes to that communication. Well, awesome. Well, this has been absolutely a joy getting back together with you guys and laughing with you all. And when I'm back in Chicago, I'm definitely coming over to see the paid off house.
Okay.
And the little dog. I have not seen your dog, so I do have to see the dog too. So thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time taking out of your retirement schedule to spend some time with me.
Always a top priority.
Yay. Thank you. I received that because I do feel like one of your family and you guys do put me as a priority. And I'm so grateful for everything that I've learned from you and just the trust that you guys have put in me over the years. Thank you for that too.
Well, I just want to say thank you for including us in this endeavor. Whatever small little bit we can do to help. This has been fun.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for all your support. And so that is our show for today. So thank you, Kevin, Matti, Williams, for joining us and sharing a really great conversation about retirement and marriage. I hope that you guys will come back and share more wisdom as retirement continues.
Okay. Look forward to it.
All you gotta do is ask.
Okay, awesome. It's time for 5-minute activation, a quick financial therapy session to get you activated and on your way to increasing the love and money in your marriage. So can I get 5 minutes of your time? Just 5 minutes for a financial therapy activation. Today's topic is 5 guidelines for life and retirement accounts. I'm so excited about this topic. I just love it. There are 5 guidelines that I want to give you. The first 2 go together, and 1 and 2 is diversify, 2 is manage risk. So diversify is about having different asset classes in your retirement account. And you do that because you never know what's going to be up or down, and you don't want to have to rely on one asset class to get you to retirement. So you spread out your money over different asset classes. Well, the same is true for friends. My Uncle Foster says you want to have friends in high and low places, because your friends in low places with low assets might have creativity that your friends with high assets just don't have. And so you want to mix your life up with different kinds of friends. And this mix helps you manage risk. And managing risk, some people think that means don't be aggressive. Well, not necessarily, because there are all types of risk. And sometimes being too conservative can keep you from reaching your goals. Managing risk is about knowing how conservative or how aggressive to be at each time. I think a 2A, because the second part of that is about rebalancing. So you may manage risk in the beginning when you set the plan in place, but as time goes on, you may get out of balance. So you want to make sure you're going back and rebalancing the account to make sure you keep the mix of assets that you need for your retirement account. Now, the same is true for life. You want to rebalance your life, right? If you just set it and forget it, then decisions start to be made for you. Next thing you know, you're living your parents' life. You don't even really like the job you're in. Just stuff starts happening for you. Well, instead, rebalance and start making some decisions and letting go of some things, including friends and property, and just checking in on your plan. And maybe you need to adjust the plan in a logical sense, which is going on to number 3 and number 4. So 3 is managing emotions, and 4 is sticking to the plan. And these 2 go together as well. So manage your emotions means you don't change with the wind or the mood. When emotions are high, logic is low. Usually logic is low when the markets are low. And I don't know why, because that's a sale. And since when is a sale a bad thing? When the markets are low, you need to still stick to your plan, which is number 4. You've got to love your plan, and you've got to bake fluctuation into the plan. So when fluctuation happens, you don't go into your emotions, you go into your logic and say, oh yeah, this was baked into the plan. We just need an average over a certain amount of years. And even though this year is low, we may still get our average. Let's just, let our logic lead and check out what we have. Now, this is the same in life as well. You can't let one bad thing that happens ruin your whole entire day, or one mistake that your partner makes ruin your relationship. Sometimes you've got to use your logic in this place instead of using your emotions. Sure, you're hurt, but as I've heard many couples that I've interviewed say, heartbreak happens. You just have to be with someone who's worth it, and that can get you back into your logical place. Now, this last one is super important, and I want to bring it up because we do not do a good job of this very often, and that is forget the Joneses. Oh my goodness, we're so quick to follow what everybody else is doing, but guess what? There are no Joneses. Well, actually, you are the Joneses. So just like you're trying to keep up with everybody else, well, they're trying to keep up with you too. So forget the Joneses. Let's do away with the Joneses. Just because they buy a new car doesn't mean it's time for you to buy a new car. And when it comes to your retirement accounts, yeah, maybe your grandparents had a great retirement, but that doesn't mean you need to match what they did. You have to do what's right for your situation. And just because your sister buys some new exciting stock or ETF doesn't mean you go out and buy that. It may not be right for your life. And it may seem like it is. Maybe you and your sister both have 2 kids and a husband, and you both live in the same city, and it sounds like you have the same life. But what if you have a special needs child? Or what if you've decided you want to go back to school? So then you guys don't have the same life, and you've got to make different decisions. So that is our 5-minute activation for today. And you might be saying, hey, Kanae, you don't talk about the numbers as much. And that's true, I don't. And that's because mindset is so much bigger than the numbers. If you get the numbers right and you don't have mindset right, the numbers will go wrong at some point. So I want to make sure you have a strong mindset around money. And that is what financial therapy is all about. So go out there and Diversify, manage risk, manage emotions, stick to your plan, and forget the Joneses. What did you take away from today's show? You may have comments or questions. That's great. We'd love to hear from you. Head on over to this episode's webpage and leave a comment or your question, and we'll get back to you. See the link in the show description below, and remember to join our private Facebook group at KeneCorder.com/Facebook. And if this episode has inspired you to join the Prosperity Club, remember, a portion of your membership will help end financial abuse. So go ahead and head on over to KeneCorder.com/prosperity-club and take your prosperity consciousness to the next level. I'll see you there.